Hey there, Skullheads. I'm Snags.
And I'm old Silky.
And I'm Mike.
We got Mike Rabidoux back. We're going to do a Hammer horror episode, but first, old Silky.
It's Halloween.
Yeah, that's why.
It's our Halloween special.
Yeah. Old Silky first, though, is going to review the new Stones album. Then I'm going to hip you cats to what went down at the Cosmic Psycho show in Atlanta last week. Then we'll jump into the show. Take it away, old Silky.
All right, so the Stones have put out their 26th studio album called Hackney Diamonds. And it's got quite a few special guests on it. It's the last album that Charlie Watts recorded. He only plays on 2 of the songs, but they got Bill Wyman in for a couple. Pretty crazy, but it's got 12 songs. The first song is called Angry. Is a perfect lead-off rocker. It smacks of like Start Me Up. Great riffage. This would easily fit in with any of their other greatest hits with ease. You wouldn't skip a beat going from Start Me Up to Angry. The next song is Get Close. Starts off catchy enough. I wasn't really won over with it until the sax solo by James King. To me is a nice nod to those days of like Bobby Keys bringing that hard sax in. Elton John plays piano on Get Close. And then the next song is called Depending on You. This is a slower jam. One might think of Fool to Cry. Not a bad song for them. We've heard worse. This one doesn't add or detract from their legend, in my opinion. Then we get to Bite My Head Off. This one starts off a really good heavy riff. Mick tearing it up. Also almost a part 2 of Angry, the leadoff track. There's a filthy bass groove from Paul McCartney on this one. This is one of their best songs on the album. It was what I thought. And then Whole Wide World is just classic Stones. Bizarrely, it reminds me of Cheap Trick somehow. I'm not sure where, just in the vocal, but Mick kind of puts the Brit drawl on it. It's got a fantastic guitar solo as well. Then Dreamy Skies is like a bluesy barroom delivery. It's really good. Always in the background whenever the Stones get going. You know, the blues is always right there. I love that they mention old Hank in the lyrics, but it's a slow ballad. Got a real classy harp and slide guitar piece in there. And then Mess It Up is another classic Stones jam about a real crazy bitch. All those dysfunctional relationships make for great tunes. This one's timeless. It's obviously the Stones, but it blends in with so many of their songs. This one could be from 30 years ago. You know, Charlie plays drums on that one, and then on the next one, Live by the Sword. This one really gets nasty. Mick's laying down his typical swagger. And, you know, throughout this record, the guitar is just jamming out. Elton John and Bill Wyman are on this one, along with Charlie Watts. This would be the last one he played on Mess It Up as well. Then Driving Me Too Hard. Think about the Stones all the way back to songs like Play With Fire or Heart of Stone. They don't write nice love songs. They write about frustrations in relationships. Nothing's easy. And that one's definitely another classic. And then Tell Me Straight. Finally, we get to the Keith song. This one's a slow burner, but it's one of the better ones on here. As Keith says, just tell me straight. And he does that with an honest purity, I felt. And now the controversial Sweet Sounds of Heaven. Mick just rings this one out. He duets with Lady Gaga, but her presence is very much way in the back. She just accents Mick pouring out his soul, reminiscent of like I Got the Blues from Sticky Fingers. And then it has a kind of a breakdown, and the two deliver a vocal back and forth that brings to mind Just Want to See His Face from Exile on Main Street. And then the band just builds up to bring it all crashing down for the finale. Honestly, I was very, very impressed with this song in general. And Stevie Wonder plays piano on this one. Just a really kind of gospel blues send-off. And then the final song, Rolling Stone Blues. Here they wrap this classic album up with a classic blues song, also better known as Catfish Blues. They really come full circle, as this would have been a song from way back in the days of Mick and Keith meeting each other at the train station. Keith had like blues records under his arm, and it just sealed their fate forever with that chance meeting. But Rolling Stone Blues is definitely them nodding to Muddy Waters, who, you know, basically their name is after a Muddy Waters song. So that's Hackney Diamonds, their 26th American record, released October 20th of this year. First studio album of theirs since 2005's A Bigger Bang. It's the first one after Charlie Watts has passed away 2 years ago. And as I said before, Elton John, Lady Gaga, Paul McCartney, Stevie Wonder, and former bassist Bill Wyman show up to make that one of their better albums in the last 40 years. So
nice.
That's and I tell you, on that Lady Gaga, I would not give that such props if it's that good. I can't take away from it. Doesn't matter who's, I mean, anybody could be singing in the background on, you know, the bits that she does. So it's really, I was very impressed with it. If it sucked, I'd be the first one to chastise the shit out of it. But anyway, so tell us about the Cosmic Psychos.
I did want to say I listened to that new Stones album too, except for the Lady Gaga song, and the songwriting is it's a notch up. They really put a lot of effort into
I'm very impressed with the whole thing, because you know, any of these guys that have been around all this time, they don't have to, you know, the Stones don't even have to put an album out. They could just tour. And
the last one
was not a throwaway record.
You know? Yeah, no, they put a lot of effort into the songwriting.
I'm very impressed with it. So,
all right. So, Cosmic Psychos were in town last week. They haven't toured America in like, you know, probably 15, 20 years or something. It's been fucking forever. I wasn't into them last time they were in America. So this is an awesome chance to see the Cosmic Psychos. First off, I'll just say
our show.
Yeah, we did an episode on them. Check out snagsandsilky.com. If you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen to it.
I think that's episode 3.
Yeah, it's an early one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived up to the hype, man. They were playing, so they show up and on this tour with 3 millennial bands. Cosmic Psychos are like our age, early 50s, and they're touring with these millennial bands, these kids in their 20s. The headliner was some band called the Chats. I got there were 2 opening acts. I got there, I missed the first opening act. I got there while this band called the Schizophrenics was playing. It's like this power trio, guitar player, singers, this kid in his 20s. Obviously watched a lot of Pete Townsend on YouTube because he's doing the windmill thing. All the little whippersnappers are going nuts because they've never seen that before.
Oh my God.
And they were really working hard. I don't think the songwriting was quite there like the Cosmic Psychos, and you know, who knows what'll happen with them. But some
of these bands that tour and they open and they get a couple shots, and for some, like I saw an amazing band open for Zach Sabbath, and where they at? Like they were so good. I bought the little CD they had in the, where the t-shirts. And I thought, man, these guys are gonna, and where they at? It's been years. So
yeah,
what happens?
I would not go buy the t-shirt or anything for the Schizophrenics, but they were bearable,
Yeah.
So the Chats, obviously the Cosmic Psychos are their heroes because they took the Cosmic Psychos out on this tour. Cosmic Psychos were playing right before the Chats, right? And the crowd is about 80 to 90% whippersnappers and 10 to 20% old fuckers there to see the Cosmic Psychos. And so Schizophrenics are done. And then these old fuckers walk out, John Mad Macca with his big beer gut and Ross with a little baseball cap doing a little bit of an old man walk. And the drummer, and they sit down, and the crowd, you could tell there's just this vibe of what the fuck is this?
Yeah, where's the
so
the rock stars?
They plug in and they start playing, and during the choruses, there's 10 to 20% of us are dead in a ditch, dead in a ditch, just singing along, fists in the air. Kids are looking around like, oh, these guys have a fan base. And then the brilliance of the Cosmic Psychos, they write these great punk rock songs with funny lyrics and that you can scream along with. And then the bass player and the drummer will lean back into this groove, and the guitar player go up and step on that fucking wah-wah pedal. And the minute he hits that wah-wah pedal and goes into one of his solos, the crowd went fucking nuts.
That's great.
And they do that with every song, have this little jam in the middle. And by the end of it, the mosh pit was going, the whole thing was just in full gear. But it was kind of cool to watch them win over this crowd of millennial whippersnappers. One funny incident that happened at one point in the show, John Mad Macca walks up to the mic and he's like, looks over at Ross. He's like, Ross, what city are we in? And I yelled out at the top of my lungs, fuck which city?
Nice.
And he stops and he looks at me and he goes, oh, we'll have none of that. And then he goes, Ross. He goes, Ross, what city are we in? And Ross says, Ross says, we're in Atlanta. And then John goes, no, we're in Fuckwit City. And they kick into the... So I ruined their intro to Fuckwit City.
That's great.
Which was pretty funny.
I'm sure you're not the only one. It's got to, the right fan is going to immediately pounce on that. So.
Yeah. But overall, it was a glorious religious experience. They're in the same league. There are some bands... Motorhead is obviously the most amazing band that's ever lived. And there are some bands, like the Beatles that are close to Motorhead, right?
Mm.
Well, this band is up there in that realm with Motorhead as far as just a ferocious live experience, no bullshit, take no prisoners, and they're going to play till they die like Lemmy did, which is awesome.
Absolutely, man.
And so after they were done playing and the Chats were getting ready to play, I marched out of there loudly proclaiming to everybody, the show's over. You're not going to see anything better than that. You might as well leave now, and walked out. And so that was awesome. It was a good show. Yeah.
I love it. That's I would have liked to have seen that one. But
every now and then I'll tell Silky about some awesome music event here, and I'll just get a text back that says "fucking Florida."
Yeah, because it's nothing here. Although in January, Glenn Hughes is coming to a really small bar here, and he's going to be doing the entire Burn album for Deep Purple's 50th anniversary.
That's going to be phenomenal. That album is just amazing.
I would like to really try to get to that. I don't know yet what the price of the tickets would be, but it's a pretty small play. That'd be killer. So,
I think if you go to that, which I think you should, I think you should review it on the show. That'd be awesome.
No, absolutely.
Hold on a second.
What is that?
Are we getting our second ever phone call to this podcast?
Jeez.
It's the second ever call. Hello, Snags and Silky Show. How may I help you?
Is this Snags?
This is Snags. Yes.
Yeah, we had traded some emails, Snags. Kind of going out on a limb here and revealing something, but I got into the show and dig the show, and I thought, what the heck? It's been a long time, and I thought I'd make it public.
Who are we talking to?
We get emails from millions of people around the world, so you're going to have to be a little more specific.
Well, I don't know if you remember Snags, but I told you this is actually Buddy Holly. Kind of a big deal here, and kind of want to just let the public know what's been going on since.
Now,
Buddy,
are you a long-time listener, first-time caller? Is that what we got going here?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I had to call in. Your guys' passion for music and all things pop culture just warmed my heart, and I said, you know what, it's time, and I don't think I have much longer to go anyway, and what the heck.
I gotta say, people, this is a historic moment. We have dead Buddy Holly on the phone. What's it like being dead? What was it like when the plane crashed?
Well, I will tell you, actually very much been alive this whole time.
You did an Elvis?
So nobody knows what happened other than me. I'm the only one who survived, of course, and basically what happened was Big Bopper and Richie Valens got in a fight over who was going to get an RC Cola or the Grape Knee High, only two cold beverages left on the plane. Jeez. And I'm trying to calm them down. The pilot's trying to calm them down. And then Knee High gets all shooken up. The top popped off, went right into the pilot's eye, killed him. None of us knew how to fly, of course. And basically, just before the plane went down, I got out and managed to land on my Stratocaster casing to save my life.
I thought you were going to say you landed on the Big Bopper, which cushioned your fall.
No, not at all. I fell out of the plane about 30 yards before it hit the ground and, of course, went up. And I was actually looking at walking away from all of it anyway, newly married, kid on the way, and I was just kind of burned out on it. And I was about ready to call it a day. And so that happened. And I just decided to go into semi-hiding and been in Clear Lake, Iowa ever since.
Now, so is Elvis your neighbor?
No, I believe Elvis is dead. I believe Elvis died.
Oh. I always heard rumors that the Big Bopper was like laying a Cleveland steamer on one of the stewardesses, or is that?
No, nothing that exciting or filthy. Just a goofy fight over soda pop. The dumb thing.
Damn it.
You know?
That's terrible.
That is terrible.
Well, I made the best of it. Grew a beard, wore glasses with different frames, and after about a year, opened up a guitar shop there in Clear Lake, Iowa, Cricket's Guitars, and I've been selling and repairing guitars ever since.
That's tremendous.
Wow, that's amazing.
Buddy Holly.
Buddy Holly, ladies and gentlemen. This is an exclusive.
The person who knows is I actually swore him to secrecy. I've been in correspondence and even met with a few times. Actually, Keith Richards. I actually wrote most of Sticky Fingers with Keith.
Nice.
A lot of people don't know that. He gave me a little backsheesh on the side.
Nice.
But other than that, just laying low, repairing guitars. But, don't know how much longer I have and might have to close the guitar shop and go back into hiding. I don't really want all the hype. But if I was going to reveal myself, I wanted to do it on a podcast with your guys following for sure.
Yeah. That way nobody will find out.
Yeah. That's tremendous.
Very, very good.
That's awesome.
Well, a fucking honor to talk to Buddy Holly.
Yeah, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, my first interview since 1959. So kind of exciting.
Tremendous.
That's a scoop, ladies and gentlemen. See what you get when you listen to the Snags and Silky podcast.
You heard it here, people.
You get fucking formerly dead Buddy Holly.
Well, let's get the show cracking. We've got our guest Michael Rabidoux.
Say hi, Mike.
I've got the Knutson twins here. They're picking up their guitars. I got them fixed.
Right. Yeah.
Close this sale out, gentlemen.
Right.
How you got to get them back on the farm when they've seen Jackie Treehorn? That's what I want to say.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope Gary Busey did not get too much hate mail from you. When he did the Buddy Holly story in '79.
Never saw it.
Oh, avoided that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me get to the Knutsons.
Right
Thank
on,
you,
sir.
guys.
All right. Rail them, bitches.
Wow. Fucking
All right,
Buddy
so
Holly.
Mike, let's bring Mike on. What do you think about that, Mike, having Buddy Holly on the same show you were on?
That's insane. What
Yeah.
a big reveal.
Yeah.
Never really heard rumors of, we've all heard the Elvis rumors, but
yeah,
those rumors kind of died down when we all started carrying a camera in our pocket. But it looks like Buddy Holly just kind of flew under the radar and managed to make a life for himself. Very exciting.
I'm floored that he had our number.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
Well,
Keith Richards must be a fan. I bet Keith is our fan of our podcast and slipped Buddy Holly the email.
Possibly. I know Keith probably got wind that we were going to review the album, because shit gets leaked to TMZ all the time. So
yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
Anyway, so the topic this week is the Hammer horror films. We're gonna have Rabidoux kind of give us a little rundown on the Hammer studios, and but this is our Halloween special. What better franchise than to discuss the Hammer horror films?
Well, great time of year, obviously, to discuss it. Hammer horror films for me, probably as much as I love what I call the Universal Monster film. Yeah. I actually will say Hammer are my favorite horror films on the whole. And as a studio, doing some research for it, I actually discovered one gentleman directed a lot of my favorite films, which I didn't even really know until earlier or later last week doing the research.
Terrence
Fisher. Man, he directed a bunch of them, and I really enjoy him, even some of the lesser known ones. Hammer started up pretty much actually right after World War II and did a lot of stuff that was not horror initially, which I also have seen in later years. That's really good. A lot of what we would call film noir, a lot of war films, some of them pretty controversial that I don't think would have been produced in American films. One is specifically about a Japanese prison camp, which makes Bridge on the River Kwai look like a tea party.
Holy shit.
Where you get that title again? I've seen it, but it's been a long time. And we'll get to the horror in just one second. But I really just, in general, they're just so creative. I had sent that earlier to, sorry, Mr. Silky.
You want me?
And I want me to
look? Oh, you sent? Oh,
Silky, why don't you look it up while he keeps laying down the?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That makes me feel like an idiot. But really great film about a Japanese prison camp, which is really unabashedly in that scenario paints the Japanese as brutal villains, and just that kind of theme, almost exploitive, really, before that term was known. But to get into the horror, they basically got into producing horror films and kind of decided to reset all of the Universal stuff. Dracula with Christopher Lee, of course, Christopher Lee's in a ton of their films. Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Werewolf, kind of all that stuff. And then also brought in, I think, a better version than we were doing here in America of the films about, atomic power and atomic power creating these monsters that I really love. And I know Silky has some specific films he wants to talk about, as do I. We had a few in common. I'm going to let Silky hit up on a bunch of those.
Well, I've got the movie you were talking about. It's called
title, please.
It's called The Camp on Blood Island.
Exactly. Thank you.
With
bookmark that one.
Yeah, Carl Mohner, Mohner, Andre Morell, Edward Underdown, and Walter Fitzgerald. So the screenplay by John Manchip White and Val Guest. And
Val Guest, another great director for them.
I recognize him. But a Hammer film production, The Camp on Blood Island.
I do want to say, as my due diligence, you guys are the experts on this, but just so I could participate in the conversation, I did watch the Karnstein lesbian vampire trilogy just to put some effort in,
Good stuff.
I can talk about
definitely
that.
chime in because I have notes on those.
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
All right. So you want to start Rabidoux, or you want me to?
Yeah, as far as the horror goes, like I said, I don't want to sidetrack it too much. I think I tend to sidetrack when you guys have me on. I appreciate it. One other quick one I will mention though, Devil Ship Pirates.
That looks good.
Was a lot of fun. I've seen it a couple times. Netflix really opened me up. I had seen some of their horror, but once Netflix became a deal for you kids under 40, Netflix actually used to ship out these things called DVDs, and they look just like a CD, and they play movies. And they really had just about any movie ever produced on the planet at one point, and it was great because, you know, if you were a pig like me and could watch 2 movies a night, you know, you're just going through them and you're paying.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. And
it really let me explore all that stuff, which I never would have found on VHS.
No, they just packed that in. They just stopped shipping DVDs October.
Yeah.
What's the name of that pirate one?
Pirates. Whoa, sorry.
I got it right
here. Devil Ship Pirates, which does star Christopher Lee in the lead role. Just a fun pirate movie. You know, their whole overall, whatever the genre was, to me, was fun first, entertainment first.
So just so you cats know, Camp on Blood Island and Devil Ship Pirates are both on YouTube for all of our listeners out there. You can just find them there and bookmark them.
Yeah, because I definitely want to see those. I'll probably watch those tomorrow. But
yeah.
Great. My favorite thing about the Hammer horror is they will have these outdoor scenes, probably in England somewhere, but I've been to Romania, and you can go. I was specifically in Campina, Romania, but we went through Bucharest and went to Transylvania, and you're looking at the Carpathian Mountains. There are a lot of areas through there that you could almost be in Pennsylvania. And I'm not kidding, that rural Appalachian look, some house set back off the road, and people's clothes hanging on clothes hangers, and just a train track and just all these trees. And you're like, Jason, it looks like Pennsylvania. But the Carpathian Mountains are so dark, the Black Forest, it's eerie as shit. And I would say these Hammer horror films really capture that. And you'll have these scenes where some poor bastard gets off a horse-drawn carriage, and he's just left, walking in the woods, and you hear the wolf howls. And the Hammer films all had this orchestration, the building music, and then the best part about all those movies, a lot of them have just these drop dead gorgeous, large-breasted actresses throughout. That's just, you can't.
That's reminding me of your other stories about Romania.
Sure, exactly.
I guess you're not going to tell.
No, but Hammer really did that, I think, way ahead of American film.
Oh yeah,
much less restrained sexually, and not a lot of blatant sex, but certainly a lot of topless nudity.
Yeah,
a lot of inferred sex for sure. Way more, I think, than American film at that time. For me, American horror, come the 50s, got really awful for the most part. Super campy. Some of it was fun, but
they almost killed it
as that Universal stuff early.
Yeah.
And Hammer, thank God, really came in and carried the torch on the horror thing. I think, I would argue America might have started to take it back with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I'm going to screw up the year, but I want to say 74, 75.
74, yeah.
And then, of course, I think from there, America came back real strong.
Yeah, they almost kill it, like Hollywood almost kill it, where they cheapen the horror movies. Universal horror is just so you know, your classic vampire, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Wolfman, Phantom of the Opera. Those were just epic horror movies, and then they just B-movied the shit out of it with bad sequels. And I mean, I think like Dracula's Daughter, there's not even Dracula's not in it. There's no.
That's bad.
I don't think she even bites anybody. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I'm assuming that was on purpose. They just wanted to make them a little more lighthearted.
Maybe.
I'm guessing, because look at, I don't think they were making, even at some point, film noir got less and less edgy too in America, and I feel maybe it all kind of got a little.
But you got the Mike Hammer that Darren McGavin was in. That was 2 seasons in the late 50s, and damn near every episode he's throwing some guy out a window. And to end
was Mike Hammer though. Mike Hammer was a different deal from all the other noir stuff.
It's still late 50s.
He was a precursor to Dirty Harry, basically.
Yeah, and I think they pulled that series because of the violence, but very impressive. Anyway, but Europe was much more loosely. They weren't uptight as far as.
No, I think the only comparison probably in that era might have been Italy with some of the Mario Bava stuff and some of his contemporaries. But again, I don't want to be the sidetrack king. I'm going to jump into a film specifically that's really one of my favorites. Terrence Fisher directed, lesser known though, but starring, of course, Christopher Lee of Count Dooku fame and Peter Cushing of Grand Moff Tarkin fame. They were good friends in real life and were in a ton of these films separately and together. Definitely. And the funny thing too is that, kids, if you get into some of these films, you'll spot lots of side actors from Star Wars: A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, who, of course, they filmed those in England.
That's why I was wondering why.
A lot of the Imperial minor officers you'll catch with these Hammer films. But I'm speaking of The Gorgon, 1964, directed by Terrence Fisher. Really fun movie. Takes place in the early 20th century, and kind of a Gorgon is what Medusa was in Greek mythology. She turns you to stone if you look right at her. Just a really fun movie, but again, genuinely creepy. Most of their films were color, and it still worked real well. The effects are fun. They're of the day. The blood is the blood of the 60s and early 70s. But
very red.
Not fun, but I think great actors. I mean, Lee and Cushing certainly got typecast in this type of thing at some point, but they made a great career out of it. But I would argue some really good acting on the whole. Just as now, I think, none of these people in English films were unattractive, but America was getting into this thing where everyone just had to be a 10. The men were 10s, the women were 10s, and it not as bad as it is now, but it started to take away. It almost takes you out of it. These look like real people, and they look like. But I would say Hammer spared no expense at the time on sets, costumes. Just fun stuff.
Dead leaves.
The way they turn into stone in the Gorgon is still fun to see today.
Yeah,
and it's much more practical, of course, without all the computers, which has its place. That's a separate podcast.
Sure.
But just that fun stuff. You can imagine them just having fun when the director yelled cut behind the scenes. And it's a fun one. Gorgon is definitely one of my favorite films Hammer ever did. Lesser known. I used to see this stuff, I feel like, on maybe a local creature feature type show. I definitely was introduced on some of those. But then again, I want to say it was Turner Network Television in the late 80s, early 90s was doing a good job, I think, on Friday or Saturday nights, bringing some of these back.
Feature features,
that type of thing. Who was the guy who used to host that for TNT? He was a character. They did. I think Turner must have gotten the rights to a lot of the Hammer stuff, at least to show on television.
Yeah.
And that introduced me to a lot of it.
All through the 70s, there was a creature feature Friday nights that I would watch, like Curse of Frankenstein. Obviously, that first Christopher Lee horror of Dracula. those were just epic.
Yeah, can you talk about that film specifically? I know that was one of the ones on your list that you loved.
Yeah, I kind of did a top 10. Curse of Frankenstein, really good gothic drama, more of a dramatic movie, where they do profile Mary Shelley's novel. It's very well acted. Christopher Lee is brilliant. Again, I mentioned that suspenseful soundtrack. It's filmed real outdoor sets, not some sound stage, you know.
You can find the Gorgon on Tubi, just FYI. Yeah.
But this was Lee's first film for Hammer, The Curse of Frankenstein, 1957. And he plays the monster. Peter Cushing is Baron Victor Frankenstein. And it's the first film to co-star Lee and Cushing. But they starred together in over 20 films and became very close friends. So that is Curse of Frankenstein. And I remember seeing that at a very young age. And I remember being confused because it was not Boris Karloff. Because that, to me, that was Frankenstein. I'm like, who is this? Is weird. And it was,
no, that's a good point too. And I think it was, if I can say on your podcast, ballsy of Hammer to really come up with a completely different makeup effect for the Frankenstein character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously Karloff's is so famous and was then, of course, mimed by Fred Gwynne on the Munsters.
Oh yeah.
But I really like, and I like both, but the idea is that, hey, we want to do this our way, and I think was really gutsy. I think it would have been very simple to copy it or do something super similar.
Yeah.
But it really is almost, I would dare say, more realistic while still being fun.
Right. Yeah.
And I would say sticks closer to the novel, which is, the novel's actually phenomenal. Again, another podcast. But
yeah,
I love it. And it's one of those where it stands up. You can watch the first one with Karloff, directed by James Whale, and go get another beverage and do some more popcorn, and then sit down and watch the Lee one, the Christopher Lee version, rather.
And
great stuff, just super fun.
I think Peter Cushing did 2 or 3 Frankenstein movies. I've not seen the other ones. But then the next one I did was Horror of Dracula, this 1958. Peter Cushing is
Van Helsing.
Van Helsing, thank you. Van Helsing, and then Christopher Lee is Dracula, is one of the best Dracula movies of all time. 1957. Was epic castle, and they do kind of go, you know, they flirt with the original Bram Stoker Dracula, but it's its own movie. You know, this was the first one with that introduced fangs, where you saw Dracula with actual fangs. You didn't, you know, Bela Lugosi did not have the teeth like that. So, but it just,
I think that would have been unheard of in film. Then maybe it might have been too much. Bela Lugosi had played him on the stage, and apparently, you know, of course, we wish it could have been filmed. Apparently, that stage show used quite a bit of fake blood or theatrical blood, and they had to tone it down a little bit for the film. The film is still rather creepy.
Sure.
But again, I would actually argue, as far as a representation of Dracula, I'll take the Christopher Lee version.
Yeah, just you know, you've got the creeping camera coming down into the basement of the whole castle, and the music building and building. And as a young kid, you're like, holy shit, don't go down there. What are you doing? You know, I remember really not wanting to go down into, you know, the camera's leading you down into this crypt, and you're thinking, what the hell are they, you know, don't they know Dracula's down there?
This reminds me of the Eddie Murphy routine where he's talking about Amityville Horror, and he's like, these people in these movies, the walls of your house start bleeding. They're like, let's call more people over. He's like, if I was there, I'd be like, too bad I can't stay.
Time to go.
That'd be the end of the movie.
Well, in this, it's the camera creeping forward. It's not a person, but it's there's a ton of those Christopher Lee Dracula where just the camera work and the music really bring the creep factor.
Well, I would jump ahead, and I'm not sure which one it is in the Dracula series he's in, but it's like 15, 16 years later. It's Dracula AD.
Yeah, 72.
Still starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
But it really is Dracula kind of gets into hippie London.
They really make it modern.
Yeah. So it's 1972, Dracula AD, hot pants and a taste for everything. Oh, I'm sorry. The Count is back with an eye for London's hot pants and a taste for everything. And as much as I love the music of that whole era, I despise hippies. So it was just great to see Dracula cut through these hippies.
Killing hippies. Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
Lots of large breasts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely Dracula AD 72.
All right, you can find that one on Amazon.
Yeah, it's at the time it was the contemporary setting they attempted to update Dracula for modern audiences.
And I think probably influenced because at that point I guess Dracula became part of the public sphere as far as trademark, and Marvel Comics did an amazing series for several years.
Yeah,
just called Tomb of Dracula, but they set it in the 70s, and he was officially part of the Marvel Universe, mostly on its own, but occasionally there would be characters from within the universe. And they, of course, introduced Blade in that series.
Right.
I want to say in the early, within the first 20 issues. Ahead of its time, because it had essentially the same writer and artist for 5-6 years. I mean, it really tells an overall.
Isn't Blade in Brother Voodoo as well?
Yeah, that all kind of crossed over at some point, different horror stuff. The idea of not remaking Dracula so much as saying, hey, he's still alive, it's the 70s, and he hates hippies too.
Yeah. Dracula AD 72 has Jessica Von Helsing. She's the granddaughter of Von Helsing. And so she's kind of, in this going after Dracula, and as he's cutting through these young hippies. But that's a fun movie. It's not as serious as some of the other ones. But the one I wanted to profile next is the Vampire Lovers, which is the first of you had Vampire Lovers, Lust for a Vampire, and Twins of Evil. And they were kind of a loose trilogy, basically a reworking of Carmilla. And so it's the Karnstein trilogy, as Snags referred. So what did you think, Snags? What did you think of those?
I dug it. I was actually impressed with the sets. I mean, maybe Mike knows. Did they build? I guess it was a combination of real castles since they're in Europe and sets that they built. Do you know?
I think certainly a combination of both. And look, they're a movie studio and there's budgets involved, but you never blatantly say, "Oh my gosh, I saw that set in a film from last year."
It really
it's interesting.
Yeah,
and I think the acting in that trilogy is actually really solid.
There's
bought into it, so you buy into it. It's
the plot's a little, thin here and there, but you've got the protective father. Peter Cushing is phenomenal in there. He plays the kind of back in the day you had that priest that went around and accused people of being witches. And
that was Grand Moff Tarkin. Yeah. That was the Twins of Evil. That's the third movie.
Yeah, and those twins were filthy. Good.
They were Playboy playmates. Mary Collinson and Madeline Collinson.
Yeah, ridiculously hot.
And you do get a tit shot from one of them late in the film. It's pretty good.
Yeah, those were great. I enjoyed that trilogy. You know, I thought they might connect a little better, but they're standalone.
Well, it's the same family showing up causing havoc throughout time.
Specifically,
So
the first one, I've seen all three, but the first one within the last week, there's a couple of beheadings in it, and they literally show the neck stump, if you will, bleeding. And I just don't think you were going to see that in the early 70s in an American-made film.
Yeah,
edited when it got distributed over here, but it led to kind of this is what it is. You've got to stab it in the heart and cut its head off.
And there's definitely a use of blood throughout all the Hammer movies with red. Just the jumps out. The color is just very vivid. Stays with you. Brides of Dracula was supposed to be the sequel to that first Christopher Lee Dracula movie, Horror of Dracula, but Lee is not in that one. So you've got a young baron who's inherited the Dracula curse, and his mother keeps him locked away. And then this baron seduces a girl to let him free, and then he wreaks havoc throughout the town and kills his mother. And I mean, so again, they touch on these taboos of things that you would not expect. Brides of Dracula, while not having Christopher Lee in it, is still a very well acted movie and a well written script that it stands on its own. It's a good movie.
I enjoy it. I mean, like I said, if you're going to sit there and binge watch every Hammer film, you're going to have some clunkers. You're going to have some where they dashed it off, but that one stands up. I'd like to jump back to 1957 around the Horror of Dracula one, The Abominable Snowman.
Yes.
Which was not a concept that has ever been beaten to death on film, maybe to the best. That's got Peter Cushing in the starring role, but also Forrest Tucker, who, if you look him up, was a very well-known American actor. He plays an American in the film.
Yeah.
And it's just, some of it might have been sets, but some of it, I think they must have had to go film in the snow somewhere. Would have probably been cheaper than doing it on a set. But Forrest Tucker's great in it. Him and Cushing play really well off one another. He was in a ton. If you look at his IMDb page, he was just in a boatload of American films and television. You'll recognize his face right away. Forrest Tucker. Val Guest directed that one. Certainly Val Guest and Terrence Fisher were really kind of the auteurs of the Hammer.
Sure.
Particularly horror, but in general. And it's just a fun movie. They're out there trying to find this thing, and very suspenseful. It is black and white. It has kind of a noir horror mix. Have great use of shadows. Shadows as a special effect, making use of what they had at the time. That looks like...
That one made me think of The Thing, the original Thing where they're out in the snow.
Oh, just no question. John Carpenter had seen that movie. Obviously, he'd seen The Thing from Outer Space, which is the basis. But yeah, no question, Abominable Snowman he must have seen that. You could just tell.
Yeah.
I think he was inspired. I'm guessing, but I think he was inspired in his early on films. It doesn't have to cost, even back then, $20 million to make. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, what did he make Halloween for? I don't want to misquote it.
I don't know, but that
stupid low amount of money.
Yeah, they blocked off a street and filmed in a couple. A lot of it's outside.
If you tell a young person now that all Michael Myers is that stupid Captain Kirk mask painted white, that's genius.
It is.
It is, because it's hard for me to even see it in it because the way it's just painted stark white. Yeah.
But it's Bill Shatner. And it's Shatner again. Shatner coming in, and
Shatner shows up everywhere. He's
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah,
because no one's
gonna believe that shows up the 6 degrees of separation everywhere.
Oh, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, Shatner's the pre-Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, he's the anti-Bacon.
Yeah,
I've got to look up that budget for that, and I know again I'm off the hand.
Yeah, you do that, and then
Mike, do whatever side tangents the fuck you want. We don't care.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, side tangent.
In 1978, So this is post Star Wars,
Yep.
post
Jaws.
Jaws.
Yeah.
$320,000.
That's
Daggone.
Brad Pitt's assistant makes $2 million now.
People are still watching that movie. It's still good. Amazing.
One of the best horror films ever. And I would argue Halloween 2 is in terms of it being tied to the first film in a good way. Mm-hmm. I would literally compare it to The Godfather 2 or Empire Strikes Back as far as being a great sequel.
Yeah. So the one I wanted to talk about is The Devil Rides Out, and I definitely want to hear what you have to say on this one. This is one of my favorites. Tracking this movie down.
Yeah, it's not streaming anywhere.
No. Back in 2020, I just could not find it anywhere. And Rabidoux had like the DVD or something, and it was nowhere.
Still isn't anywhere.
I stumbled upon a Blu-ray of it, but it was Region 2. But then I start looking at these PAL players, and so I got one. It costs the same as a Blu-ray player in America, but why not have one that you can play anything? So I got it, and I now have a copy of The Devil Rides Out, also known as The Devil's Bride.
It's on a site that Silky and I both dig called DVD Lady. You can get it for $12. Anything you can't find anywhere streaming,
always look there.
Or on DVD. DVD Lady got all the rare shit.
Yeah.
Well, this is one that I've tried to be careful with all these not to blow out spoilers, and I definitely won't with this one. So this, I do remember specifically, this would have been early 90s. I saw this on that TNT show late on a Friday or Saturday night. And I really probably just watched it because it was Christopher Lee and it had Dead Devil in the title. And it was The Devil's Bride at that point.
Right.
And I just loved it. I mean, it's a great story. There's not a lot of blood.
No.
But there's a tremendous, I think for the time, some really cool special effects. And it's basically about this collection of Satanists, led by Charles Gray, I think.
Yeah.
Plays Mikado, who's like, he very much supposed to be a stand-in for Aleister Crowley.
Sure.
In a cool way. It takes place in that era. I think 30s, 40s London era. But Christopher Lee plays a character who, and I'll go back real quick. The novel is called Devil Rides Out, written in the 30s.
By Dennis Wheatley.
Dennis Wheatley, who was a major, famous, popular writer of his time. A lot of horror stuff, some espionage stuff. Wrote several books with this character that Christopher Lee plays. Now, the film's from 1968, and I'm convinced, because I've read The Devil Rides Out by Dennis Wheatley, and it's a fun novel. This is a very close adaptation to it.
Yeah, I'd like to read it.
But as in with a lot of novels, there's not a ton of detail about how some of the characters look. I think Christopher Lee's character, they went out of their way to make him look like Doctor Strange from the Marvel Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Although he's not any kind of a wizard. He's just kind of this guy he's kind of the leader of this group of 4 friends. You can tell they served in the war together. It's very heavily implied. And it's just this great story. They get a hold of their young friend who happens to be wealthy, and they use this guy to, throw their ceremonies. Very creepy right from the get-go. Good character development. While it's just kind of nonstop, them trying to stay ahead of they get their friend back, and they've got to have him now because he's been initiated, and they're trying to bring the devil here on Earth. And I'll leave it not a spoiler, but very, very cool. Great.
The bit at the end is just so creepy. The goat head and everything, and
crazy.
I love it. I like that Richard Matheson wrote the screenplay. And Matheson, if anyone who gets into reading his stuff will just be floored by how amazing an author Matheson is.
I would be surprised if Matheson hadn't read a great deal of Wheatley.
Yeah.
And a slight side note, I'll say this too. We know, I've heard Geezer Butler mention the film and Dennis Wheatley in interviews.
Yeah.
It just, Sabbath's whole horror bent was certainly influenced by Hammer films in general.
Absolutely.
And I would argue this. I mean, I would love to watch The Devil Rides Out with the sound off and just listen to that first Sabbath record.
Right.
Movie plays.
Yeah.
It would probably be phenomenal.
Yeah. You might do a Pink Floyd Wizard of Oz thing with that one.
But
what were you going to ask? What were you going to ask, Snags?
Hip our readers to other shit that Richard Matheson has written, just to give us some context.
Well, he wrote The Incredible Shrinking Man.
I just read a couple weeks
Twilight
ago.
Zone, wrote a dozen episodes of Twilight Zone.
He wrote the short story, I believe, prior to Twilight Zone. And I'm going to screw up the title, but Terror at 35,000 Feet.
Yeah.
Which, as great as that episode is, that story, I just read it. I've been doing a Halloween reading thing.
Yeah.
Tremendous suspense. Yeah. Again, as a lot of stories or novels are, better than a show or movie, because it just really leaves you, as the reader, wondering at the end, is he crazy or did he see this thing?
Yeah.
It leaves it kind of up to you to decide for yourself, which I love that kind of story.
And he wrote the Night Stalker TV movies. I knew I'd heard that name before.
Yeah. But he is just such an amazing author. Huge influence on Stephen King.
Sure,
without a doubt.
Well, one thing you got to love about King is he absolutely was never afraid to say, "Hey, I love this stuff." Even though he knew people would. Oh, look, it's clear in his writing, but I think he loved it so much he wanted to promote it. I would imagine Stephen King is responsible for a lot of Richard Matheson book sales in the last 30, 40 years.
I certainly
his credit.
Yeah, with John Fonte, just digs it and pimps it.
Yeah, but he wrote I Am Legend, which was also Charlton Heston was in a version of that.
Omega Man for sure.
Omega Man.
My favorite Will Smith movie, of course, just straight up named I Am Legend.
Yeah. But The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price, that was a version of that same I Am Legend. But the Shrinking Man, What Dreams May Come, and he's a ton of well-known stories.
You brought out the big Megillah. Devil Rides Out. One of my top 5 horror films, period. And I also found this out over the last week researching Christopher Lee's favorite film that he did for Hammer.
Oh, yeah.
A superior story, I think, for a horror film.
Yeah.
And again, well done. I would imagine, and I could look it up, some of the effects for the time had to be fairly expensive, I would think.
Yeah.
Certainly by Hammer standards.
Now, one thing I will say with all these horror movies, they're more a slower paced build on, your average moviegoer read a lot. And so the pacing for some of these movies, your typical horror guy who goes to see movies now, sensory overload, everything flashing and going.
It's going to be different from Saw. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not the same. It's more of a mental buildup, and you have to put yourself kind of in that time frame. Some of those vampire movies are set in the 1800s, and these are very proper people, and something's not right, and let's go over here. What's going on? It's a different thing, but there's a lot of suggestive versus just let's hack somebody's fucking head in with a hammer and just continue. Walking Dead, where the guy's just getting hit over and over and and then finally there's a splatter on the TV screen. It's more cerebral is what I'm trying to say, and just a different vibe, So
I would agree on some level. And I'm not obviously for any censorship. And the first couple Saws were fun. But for me, as far as the gore fest, I'll go back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. No one's ever done it better since.
No.
And again, with average people who look like normal people, whereas to me, like some of the Saws, it's like, well, Chris Rock's in one of the Saws, and it just takes me out of it. It's like
it does. Chris Rock's not nobody actor guy.
That's a whole other, another podcast of how they've ruined modern film.
Yeah. So the next one I wanted to talk about is The Mummy, set in 1895, and they kind of mashed together the Universal Mummy movies, like basically Mummy's Hand, Mummy's Tomb, and The Mummy's Ghost. They kind of put all those together to make this movie, but all the good bits from those Universal are in this remake that Hammer does, where they go in and essentially awaken this mummy, and all hell breaks loose. But just a really well done tribute, to the Universal horror mummy movies.
So I think it's a great version of that mummy story. Great, similar, maybe one of the more similar to the Universal as far as the direct plot, I would argue.
Yeah.
As far as they discover this thing and they're cursed for fooling with it, but I really like it. The Mummy looks great. A great movie. I mean, a lot of fun. Again, obviously influenced by the Universal stuff, but they said let's do it our way a little bit, I think, and I enjoyed it very much.
Mm-hmm. And the other one I wanted to mention was Taste the Blood of Dracula, 1970. This would have come out right after the Prince of Darkness one that Christopher Lee did, which was not a Hammer film. He was not a huge fan of just the two-dimensional Dracula that the Hammer films had kind of become. And so he goes off with Jesse Franco and does Prince of Darkness, which was also called just Count Dracula. And that followed the book a lot more. But it doesn't pack the same punch as the Hammer vibe with the music, the intensity, the soundtrack really adds to all of those. So Taste the Blood of Dracula is they accidentally resurrect Count Dracula, unknowingly killing a disciple of his. And in the process, the Count seeks to avenge his dead servant by making the trio die at the hands of their own children. So you've got these rich, snobby fuckers who just, attack women, do whatever they want in this little club of theirs. And then they're basically bored. And this guy says, hey, I got this vial of Dracula's real blood. And then so they are, basically brought in to try it. And the servant's like, try this. And he's trying to get them to pay him. And he drinks some of it and then dies horribly. And so then Dracula goes after these guys' children. So
that's a fun one because it really almost paints Dracula as the good guy.
Yeah,
you dislike these other people. It's almost like the AD 72. Yeah, Dracula's a monster, but
very much. Yeah,
they're fucking hippies. They're just so expendable.
Yeah, they're just repulsive. But these rich guys are, they got everything they deserved. I thought. Go ahead.
I just want to say, Jess Franco directed some other good stuff. He did some of these low budget exploitation flicks. The Girl from Rio, which is a sequel to The Million Eyes of Sumeru, and it's basically some sexy evil villain chicks that this guy is going to take on. That's a fun flick. Venus and Furs, which is the adaptation of the book. I know from reading Lou Reed's bio that the Velvet Underground Cats, when that was playing in New York back in the day, they went and saw it repeatedly, and then obviously wrote a song. That's a great S&M kind of thriller kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, Franco directed at least, I want to say, 2 or 3 Fu Manchu films starring Christopher Lee as Fu Manchu, which are extremely bloody and exploitative, but just tremendous fun, based loosely on the books, but with those same characters, the British Secret Service trying to stop Fu Manchu. Just great fun.
Franco's just got a pacing that his movies are just very enjoyable. Gory.
Franco always struck me, particularly the Fu Manchu stuff, if Ed Wood had been a better director.
With a budget.
He just wanted to have fun and entertain people.
And
pulls it off in a lot of his films.
He's not trying to write a Bob Dylan protest tune. He's just trying to, let's go to the movies and escape for an hour.
He was a precursor
to Stooges tune.
I think.
Yeah.
I want to throw in one just for honorable mention. I find it fun. Vampire Circus, Back to a Hammer film.
Yeah.
Directed by Robert Young, 1972. It's basically a circus comes into town, and all of a sudden these kids go missing, and eventually the locals figure out, oh, what's new? Oh, this circus troupe. They're probably behind it. But it's a lot of fun. A little campy, but also quite fun. That Hammer formula of big breasts, lots of blood.
Yeah.
And just a good romp for sure. And another one, Plague of Zombies, is actually a really good zombie film from Hammer. 1966, pardon me. Just a tremendous amount of fun. And I was surprised Brett hadn't mentioned this one. I think he had it on his list because I think we both love this actor, Curse of the Werewolf.
Yeah, that was my next one. Yeah.
Oliver Reed's first big role.
Tremendous.
I think I'm first familiar with him, of course, from The Who's Tommy, which I won't mention as being a very good film.
Right.
But The Curse of the Werewolf with Oliver Reed.
Not a very good album either. But anyways,
you're an idiot. We're not going to discuss The Who's Tommy.
It's 10 slow songs of whining. Tommy, can you hear me? Boop, 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 boop.
Go ahead.
Well, hasn't Townsend admitted many times that he threw that together?
Yeah, because Kit Lambert was like a pinball junkie, and they were like, "How are we going to push this over?"
Yeah,
and
Pinball Wizard was good, but the
song that you don't have to be familiar with the rest of it. But we do get sidetracked. I love it. I really don't like Tommy. I listened to Tommy once through the first time and I love The Who now, and I was very disappointed.
Well, Who's Next is their greatest album.
Oh yeah, that's such a good record. And I just feel like it's like any other band. It would be like if a Metallica album, if the Black Album, like it or not, went back and there was a reference to the Enter Sandman riff in every damn song. It's just he really just, for me, rock and roll is an album of 8, 10, 12 songs that are all their own thing.
I do like Quadrophenia a lot more.
For sure.
But so back to the Hammer, the one that I wanted to mention too was The House That Dripped Blood. Robert Bloch wrote that. Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing are in that. It's a kick-ass movie, and there's a surprise towards the end where you're like, oh my god. I remember just really enjoying the shit out of that one.
Tell the kids who Robert Bloch was.
Robert Bloch, he is a phenomenal fiction writer, psycho horror, fantasy. A lot of his stuff has been dramatized for radio, cinema, television. He wrote Psycho, which some of you Hitchcock fans might remember. I'm trying to Psycho, American Gothic, Firebug. I have not read that one, but
So
he's done a lot.
You can stream House That Dripped Blood on Amazon. It's on Freevee, so you gotta sit through the ads, but it's free on Amazon.
That's an epic one.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Oliver Reed. His death. He was doing The Gladiator, and he was asked specifically to not drink during the filming of the movie. And he was probably up there with Bon Scott and John Bonham as far as just hellraisers that you were not going to outdrink. And they wrapped up the movie for the most part. They did have to use CGI for some scenes in The Gladiator, but Oliver Reed went into some local bar and challenges these Navy dudes at the bar to a drinking battle, finishes up and tells everybody that's there, God, I just don't feel good. And he lays down on the floor and dies.
I didn't know that story.
And what's crazy is
one way to go out.
You go back to the 60s. Oliver Reed got into this massive bar fight and goes in to take a piss, and they all went in after him and literally broke a bottle and carved on his face. He thought he would never act again. But to this day, like, you see his scarring on his face is from an actual bar fight. But he was just a Viking warrior as far
sounds like Robert Shaw and him were probably good friends.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think Robert Shaw is quoted as saying, it's Oliver Reed, he's a whole other, I'll sit over here, but he was a lady killer and a beer slinging fool, man.
So was he kind of like Lemmy when somebody asked Lemmy, how do you deal with all the hangovers? And Lemmy said, well, you only get hangovers if you stop drinking.
Yeah. Oliver Reed was a savage, best known for his Three Musketeer movies and stuff. But
those are good. I want to wrap up as far as the Hammer horror films, which I consider horror, and I think they meant it to be. It doesn't. When I looked up top Hammer horror films, it wasn't included, but The Hound of the Baskervilles, 1959, of course, a Sherlock Holmes story. Peter Cushing as Sherlock Holmes, done very much in a creepy horror style, which frankly I think fits Sherlock Holmes anyway. Tremendous film. Christopher Lee as Sir Henry Baskerville, a smaller part, really let Peter Cushing.
I just watched that today.
The lead, so much fun. Pretty true to the novel up to a point, of course, but one of my favorite Sherlock Holmes. Cushing did a great job.
Yeah, I would have liked to see more Peter Cushing.
Good Sherlock Holmes film.
Yeah,
some of the stuff I just, the stuff with the guy who plays Doctor Strange now, it's okay. They try to modernize it. It doesn't fit. It's of that period, I think.
I would love a true rehash of those, because those books were so good.
Yeah, great. But anyway, that's again one of my favorite Hammer films for sure. I think really well done.
I just watched that today.
Did you?
Prepping for this, great stuff.
Where is it? Where'd you see that?
It is on Amazon Prime.
Oh, it's on Freevee. I see it on Freevee. I'm gonna watch that tonight.
Yeah,
that's my movie for tonight.
Add it to the list here.
Yeah,
it's a fun one.
But Curse of the Werewolf.
I'm sorry, directed by Terrence Fisher. I mean,
you can't get away from it. Curse of the Werewolf, I would say, Oliver Reed is great. You don't see him for most of that movie. I don't want to take away from it, but it's not one of the better werewolf movies,
Well, see, I think it's one
probably drunk the whole time.
Movies.
Well, no, but just the build, you're like, where's the wolf? I don't think you see a werewolf until the very end.
I like it.
Yeah.
They had to sober him up, get him on the set.
Possibly. They do. They, you know, to me, you got more of a payoff with the Universal Werewolves, where, you know, you saw Lon Chaney Jr. quite a few times in the makeup and everything. Where I don't think you get that until the very end of Cycle of Werewolf. So, you know, for me, it was kind of it, you know, it rides the wave of just the Hammer. Oh, let's watch and, you know, let's go see this one. Oliver Reed is great in almost everything he was in. Very intense actor. So, but yeah, that's I think we've profiled about 15 or 20 Hammer films here.
Yeah, kids, I would say, you know, of course, get online and look at Hammer films. Go beyond the horror. There's one I saw not that long ago. They did a couple of Robin Hood movies in the 50s. Fun stuff. I mean, a lot of noir. And again, the English twist on it, which in some ways I think was better than some of the American noir.
Yeah.
Just a great studio, and I think really held sway, particularly in horror. And I'm going to go ahead and give it the stamp of, I would say, Texas Chainsaw Massacre took it over. I love George Romero. The zombie thing to me was never. I will tell you, I don't think his zombie stuff is better than anything Hammer did. I like it, but it's fun. But Hammer was still ruling the roost, in my opinion.
To me, just to rehash a little bit, those Hammer films with the soundtrack, the blood, the use of just young vixens, it attracted you on every level, and just the intensity. You know, when Christopher Lee is chasing after Peter Cushing in Horror of Dracula, and the music's just building, and Von Helsing jumps up on the table and pulls the drapes off at the last second, and I mean, he's screwed. He's gonna get Dracula's got him. You know, you're in my castle, I own you. And then suddenly the drapes get ripped down, and that's you know, the sun comes through. You don't expect it, you know. And those Hammer films were just amazing for that.
Any of the ones starring Cushing and Lee benefit from their, I think, enjoyment of each other and getting into it, and they just their chemistry, and even in Hound of the Baskervilles, where Lee isn't in it as much. In fact, we could look it up. I think Cushing might have been the bigger star at the time. He is,
absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know. They just seem like they're having fun together, and it works.
Yeah, I would say that might be Christopher Lee's like second or third movie. I mean,
and you know what I thought about actually just today was too the genius of Terrence Fisher in the Hammer Studios teaming them up, the three of them, the director Fisher, Lee, and Cushing. It reminds me a lot of what John Ford did for decades.
Oh, you know, right, yeah.
If you look at John Ford's films, obviously John Wayne was his leader,
his
muse. But a lot of those co-stars,
he had Ward Bond in a bunch of movies.
And they worked well together.
Yeah,
and I bet you they came in early and under budget and made a lot of money for themselves.
I think most directors, if they know what they're doing, they're going to build a little troupe of actors that they want to work with. You know,
that's what Clint Eastwood did too. And I've heard him say in an interview, influenced by John Ford, if I'm going to do this, I've got to make the studio money. None of this, you know, you can love Orson Welles all you want, but he cared so little about the money that it hurt his career, because the studios were like, well, we're not just going to give you all this money. It can't take you 2 years to make a movie. You've got to have a budget and a time frame.
We need to see some reels here.
That's how Clint Eastwood got it done, because he came in under budget and early.
And
I've heard a couple stories about Clint Eastwood. He's shot a movie or two in Georgia, and I used to work in the film business. And he literally worked. It was almost 9 to 5, which is unheard of on these sets, where it's usually you show up at 6 in the morning, you're leaving at 11 o'clock at night. They do 1 million takes of everything. Clint would usually do pretty much one take.
Yeah.
He'd be like, check the gate, you know, which means check on these film cameras to see if there's any hair in the gate, you know, check the gate, clear, move on, and just literally one take, and he would wrap it up. It was almost like a 9 to 5 thing. And there's another story. I think this one was on Letterman, where he's shooting a film, and it's some kind of group scene, and there's this one extra that keeps coughing, so he has to do more than one take because the extra's coughing. Finally, he walks up to the extra and he goes, "Was that you that was coughing?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Take a fucking hike." He goes, "Oh no, I'm good. I'm fine." I said, "Take a fucking hike."
Wow. That's I would die. I would just die. Tom Hanks tells a great one, probably on the set of Sully, where
it's the only film he's done with him, I think.
Yeah. But Clint Eastwood, they're filming, and Tom Hanks does a take, and he's singing, "All right, that was a good practice. All right, we're gonna," and like you said, Eastwood's like, "All right, next shot," and Tom Hanks like, wait a minute, and he's like, "Yeah, it's great," and on to the next take.
He's the no bullshit cat.
No, yeah,
so, I've got a couple of Clint Eastwood stories that I've heard secondhand. Obviously, I don't know the man. One is I saw Richard Harris in an interview, who of course is the English gunslinger in The Unforgiven, and really wanted to work with Clint. And he was like, "Oh my God, Clint and Morgan Freeman and Gene Hackman."
Oh my God.
And they all felt the same way about Richard Harris. Like, "Oh my God,
the Doc of Death."
And Richard Harris said once, I think on Jay Leno, they were having so much fun in between shooting that he's like, "This isn't going to come off as serious as it is. We're just having a ball."
Mm-hmm.
They're telling each other stories about movies they've done, and of course the movie's brilliant. Amazing. Morgan Freeman, I saw fairly recently in an interview, said is absolutely his favorite director he's ever worked with.
It's one of the greatest westerns ever.
Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby also has Morgan Freeman. He said, "Clint, we had a blast. It, like Snags said, 1-2 takes maybe.
Yeah.
Let's get this done." But if you look at, he's had some films that we probably all love that were not big box office hits, but he made them money.
Yeah.
And in the era, he really was a great benefactor of the early VHS era and cable, because those damn movies are on cable constantly. I mean, Ted Turner's got a Clint Eastwood fetish. If a Braves game rained out, you were going to see High Plains Drifter, Pale Rider,
something.
Tiger
Sanction,
of course. I first got into VHS. I bought any VHS Clint Eastwood I came across.
Well, let's wrap up the Hammer thing. Just a tremendous run of great films. Most of them are out there on DVD. There's some decent Hammer collections, but they're a little pricey. So you kind of have to, decide, am I going to watch this more than once, or, but like
the Devil Rides Out is still hard to find.
Yeah.
I got
that's
very
a shame.
lucky.
DVDlady.com. I'll post the link on the website.
I'm going to check that site out. Thank you.
Yeah. DVD Lady's great. I don't know what their copy is going to look like, but I have several from that thing, and all the ones I have are really decent.
It comes just on a burned CD.
Yeah,
my
$12 burned CD. You get the movie, you can watch it.
Of The Devil Rides Out is definitely bootleg, but it's great. I mean, it's as good as any DVD you've seen as far as the print and the sound.
Yeah, the print I have
bootleg.
The print I think, is a legitimate release, but it's in.
My dumbass didn't even realize at the time that there was this thing as Region 2. I bought 2 copies separately of Devil Rides Out that didn't play in my damn DVD player. And I was so obsessed to have this thing. I did finally find a Region 1. Right. I mean, it's top 5 horror film for me.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm so glad I have it. And
which is why they made sure it was so hard to get.
But by being forced to buy the Region 2 one, I've got quite a few movies that I really wanted but could not find. One being a Mike Hammer, movie that was not available. You know, and it's the one. I believe it's the second or third one with the lady killers or something like that.
I had to get a region free DVD player too, but they're pretty cheap on Amazon at this point.
Yeah.
Definitely,
at this point, it's the price of a player. It's not.
Yeah,
I'm gonna rare shit.
Sure. Silky, sometime you and I are going to have a debate. I got to tell you, I love Eye the Jury with Armand Assante.
Oh, fucking terrible.
I think it is what it intended to be, though.
Maybe it's just poorly.
I am Mike Hammer.
Yeah,
that movie was like what's the comedy movie with about the male model, the Ben Stiller?
Zoolander.
Zoolander meets Mike Hammer.
That's so bad, dude. I gotta tell you
what it was.
The way though they went in on the violence and the sex and nudity.
But it's just cheaply if you watch it, it's a cheap, almost like a TV movie. It just Armand Assante,
Mike Hammer.
I can't do him.
I didn't buy him as Mike.
I didn't say it was my bet. I didn't say it was the best Mike Hammer film. I just said I liked the film.
I think it's the first one I saw. To me, that movie might have been my first introduction to Mike Hammer. Way back.
So I would ask your grace, can I close out on one thing I read over the weekend?
Yes, we need to wrap it up anyway. But
lay it on us.
Halloween is my favorite holiday. Since the end of September, I've been reading nothing but short stories by dozens of different writers. And I finished up over the weekend with a short novel by Ray Bradbury called The Halloween Tree, published in 1972. And thank you both for having me on, and happy Halloween to everybody. I just want to close out with this, and I'll say goodnight. The pumpkins on the tree were not mere pumpkins. Each had a face sliced in it. Each face was different. Every eye was a stranger eye. Every nose was a weirder nose. Every mouth smiled hideously in some new way. There must have been 1,000 pumpkins on this tree, hung high and on every branch. 1,000 smiles, 1,000 grimaces, and twice times 1,000 glares and winks and blinks and leerings of fresh cut eyes. Ray Bradbury.
Nice.
Nice.
Tremendous.
Cool.
I can't find that movie, so it's like the second or third one in like 58, but that's off topic as hell from where we
the Mike Hammer. Yeah, we already did the Mike Hammer episode.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to it if you want.
There you go. Yeah, and we talk about that movie there. So
yeah.
There's that. But
all right. So Mike, we got to get you committed for the Rockford Files episode when we do it. Are you down?
Probably sometime next year. But definitely check out our website, snagsandsilky.com. Get a t-shirt, get a hoodie, get a mug. Tell someone to listen to our show. Basically pull up the first episode, hit play, and walk away for all we care. We just want to expose someone that might hear. There's a lot of topics we get into and you may not know about.
Here's what they should do is get a megaphone system on their car,
drive through the neighborhood,
rig up their cell phone to the microphone on it, and just drive around the neighborhood playing our podcast.
Especially the Star Trek episode that got so out of control.
Yeah.
But anyway, hang out, Mike, for the pre-show wrap-up, and until next time, kids, that's been 38 episodes so far, and I can't imagine having a better audience.
Peace out.